Hey guys, Ted back here. So I've been working on the rear axle for my Cobra. The options for the Cobra are that you use either the Ford 8.8 rear axle, solid rear axle, or the alternate option is to use the independent rear suspension out of a later Mustang. The general consensus is that yeah, the independent rear suspension, it handles better, it's more comfortable. It's basically better in every way except for one, and that's the cost. It adds several $1,000s to the build. I really couldn't figure out a way for it to add less than that, and so I made the decision to go with the 8.8. And there's a couple of ways to do it. I chose the 3-link. The stock is the 4-link, which is what the Mustang uses. The 3-link improves the handling and the ride. Basically improves everything except for drag launches, and I'm not drag racing. So that's what I went with. So I've been rebuilding the 8.8 out of my parts car. So I'm most of the way along at this point. I'll just kind of go through what I've done here. So this came out of my donor car. When I got it, I took it all apart. The bearings appeared to be original. The car had been equipped with 373 gears in it. However, those gears were a no-name brand, and I did not like the way that they looked. You know, a rear end blowing up on you is never fun, and when you put this much work into something, it seems kind of silly to, you know, just put in low-quality parts. Additionally, when I took the whole thing apart, the spacer shims that were on the left side, you use the shims to set the backlash and the gear mesh. Some of those shims had actually started to come out and had been torn up by the axle. So I just decided I was basically going to rebuild the whole thing. So at this point I've put on new bearings on either side here. I've left the original spider gears in here. Spider gears are original, but they were in fine shape. There wasn't any reason I was worried about those, and they were factory Ford. I did replace the clutch packs, and the clutch packs in a limited slip differential are basically what give you the limited slip action. So these look to be original. They were definitely old, and they weren't, you know, they weren't a high performance setup. So I went with the Ford Racing clutch packs, which they make two versions. I went with for the high performance version that has carbon fiber on them. This is really not a hard job to do. The hardest part is the S-spring, and I ended up reusing the original S-spring that was in there. This had come with the install kit when I got it, but this is a much beefier spring. Obviously that's good in a lot of ways. Installing it is a lot harder, and I ended up breaking it in the install process, as you can see right here. When I was reading up, it seems like a lot of people just don't bother with these bigger springs just because installing is a lot harder. And I guess there's a difference between the ones that are recommended for 31 spline axles versus 28. I'm going with 28. Cobras, you don't really need a 31 spline. There's just not enough weight, and I'm not going for that much power. 400 horse is my goal. So I decided to just put this spring back in there. Purpose of the S-spring is really to put preload on the clutches so that you will get two nice black tire marks when you take off hard from stop. I'm going with all Ford, genuine Ford performance parts on this because I know the quality's good, and came with some new bolts over here as well. I've got the races on either side so that they go with the correct bearing when I install. And these are the rear coilovers, and that is a wasp. Go away. So over here's the axle. Like I said, doing a complete rebuild on it. So took it all apart. I'm going to paint it probably today. Got the pinion out, put in some new races there. There's the new pinion, and just this is the old pinion that I took out, and if you look carefully you can just see that the Ford Racing one just has a little bit more meat on it, and it just generally looks and feels a bit beefier. You know, when I took this thing apart, the pinion was leaking as well. I'll show you something about that in a minute. but it just didn't feel like it was put together right. It actually didn't have enough backlash from what I could tell. This is the drive shaft flange on the pinion, and you can kind of see, hard to hold with my phone and point, but you can see this little ridge, about an eighth or so of an inch down, and that's where the seal was riding. And this was leaking when I took it all apart. So I've decided I'm going to order a new flange, because again, it's only $38 from Summit, so I'll get one of those coming, and I'm sort of waiting on that to put it all back together. Oh, and here's the ring gear, and you can kind of see if you look at this. This is the Ford Racing one. It just goes all the way back to here. This has this, fillet in it. It's just not as beefy of a unit, and I want it to hold up. So what I'm going to have to do, I have to get one of those flanges in, and then I have to do all the measuring and setup, and there's lots of videos out there on that, and it's kind of a pain. I'm not looking forward to it. But then once it's all set up, I've got some upgraded axles that are beefier than stock right in here. And I'm also putting on what's called the Cobra rear end brakes. So larger diameter rotors, calipers are the same. And then there's a couple of other things I have to do for the rear axle, for the 3-link conversion. And when that's all done, I'll just do another video on that probably. So, and that came out here from this parts part of the reason why I'm changing axles on this, and this is a factory 5 nuance, is that it's really designed around the Fox body axles, which are a little bit narrower than the SN95 ones. You can use SN95 axles, but then you're a little bit more limited on your tire choices. I'm going pretty wide in the back. I'm going with 315s, and to do that, you want to have the shorter axles. So, given how much else was sort of screwed up in this car, I think it's smarter to just spend the money on the new parts anyway. So that is where I am at the moment. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Like and subscribe.